And I immediately jumped to worst case scenario, which is that he's dead.
Okay, time out. When you pictured bold tires, what were you imagining?
Okay, I don't know anything about cars, all right? I just want to make that clear. Crap Storm Sunday. I don't know how to put it.
Oh man, I like cake a lot better than that one.
Crap Storm Sunday
Yeah.
doesn't sit well
No.
with you.
No.
I also realized you didn't even say the Mariah Effect during that episode.
I did not say it during the episode.
I don't know if I did either.
Well, you said the-mariah-effect.com.
Yeah, I'll just put that at the beginning. The Mariah Effect. Or I could just put that part in, because I'm still recording.
Well, you said the-mariah-effect.com.
The Mariah Effect. The Mariah Effect. The Mariah Effect. Hey everybody, welcome to the Mariah Effect podcast. I'm Mariah.
And I'm Jason.
And here we are this week. This is episode 5. I always say the number of the episode because I don't know the name of the episode till after we record the episode, in case anybody's wondering. But yeah, I think that this week has been very, very interesting week for me. How about you,
Really?
Jason?
It's been a full week, but why has your week been interesting?
I mean, every week I do basically nothing with my time. But this week in particular, I had to really limit myself in what I was doing and how much I was taking on for myself because I have been directed by doctors to have a low stress week. I've actually officially been on bed rest this last week.
Wow. Why is that?
Well, let's see. This last Saturday, I had a seizure while I was at chemotherapy. And it's the first seizure I've had. And it was intense and it was weird. And I kind of afterwards just like went home and was really upset because it's like so many things are happening right now that like this just felt like another layer on this extremely stressful cake that I've had going the last year, basically, of my life. And so I just couldn't handle it. It was too much. And my doctor was just like, try and keep everything low stress and, you know, stay in bed. Don't like put your body through too much. Like you need to be taking extra caution for yourself this week. And I was like, what? What does that even mean? Which of course I'm joking. Like I know how to keep myself at low stress, but it just seems so ridiculous for a person like me who stresses about everything, who has such horrible anxiety about so much of my life, that to be told, hey, don't stress out this week. Don't be anxious this week is like, okay, let me figure that out real quick, even though I've never been able to my entire life.
Well, at least it's cake. Stress cake.
Yeah. I went to culinary school. Food metaphors are all I know.
Okay. I haven't heard you use that
Analogies.
one. I haven't heard you use that one before. But
It's kind of how I think about it though, like just like another layer, another topping on this crap storm Sunday. I don't know how to put it.
Oh man, I like cake a lot better than that one.
Crap storm Sunday
Yeah.
doesn't sit well
No.
with you.
No.
But I, when I worked for a sober living facility in California, one of the things that they did there was like just kind of teaching these, it was just girls that were there, but teaching women how to kind of put their lives back together. Especially when I first started working there, it was kind of like a in between sort of situation where it was like they had already been at rehab and they weren't quite ready to go home yet and like just be thrown into life all over again. They needed this like transitory space where they had more freedoms than they would at rehab, but like also more resources and people there to help them figuring out, you know, how to get a job and how to maintain a job. For a lot of the people that were there were either celebrities or people who had kind of grown up with their parents for a substantial amount of their life and been there with them, and they grew up with a lot of money, and so they hadn't had to live with responsibilities before in the way that people do when they're an adult. And so like they kind of had to be taught those things. Some of them went through like traumatic experiences that took away their ability to make those kind of connections and things like that. So a lot of it was kind of teaching the girls those sorts of steps and things. And one of the things that I had to do being overnight was learning coping mechanisms for dealing with trauma and stress and things like that. So I have some experience with that for other people. I wouldn't apply a lot of it to myself just because like I had a hard time in general with stress and anxiety, like not caused by very much of anything. It's just how I am as a person. And so a lot of times I'd try something or one or two or try and get my mind off of something, but it never got to a point where it was like severely overwhelming to where I couldn't do things. So I wouldn't practice those things because I thought I was operating at a okay level or whatever. And recently, in this last year, my stress and anxiety have gotten to be way overwhelming and way debilitating for me to be able to do things. So I was looking up some coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety, and I like came across a couple of things that I shared with Jason, and we were talking about some of the things that are listed on there. And we'll have a link to those resources or that page that I found this stuff from on the website, the Mariah-Effect.com, under the show notes for this episode. So you'll be able to see them too. But Jason, do you see any on there that like you kind of relate to?
Well, yeah, and there's obviously ways that we handle stress not so productively, but for me, some of the things that helped the most that I saw on that list were nature based. So getting outside, going for a walk, getting sunshine. I just anytime I get outside, I things help me a lot, and then exercise helps me a lot. Just moving my body. So I tend to think of myself as a very like visceral person more than a mind person. So like if my body's in motion or if I'm getting outside and feeling nature, then I tend to be less stressful. But what about you?
I feel like, when you were talking about some of the things that you were related to, a lot of the ones that you were talking about were the like exercise based ones. And I've just never had that experience with exercise. So like I was kind of like, oh, that's not me. But talking about nature and stuff like that, I do enjoy being outside, and I do enjoy like spending time with like animals, things like that. I love animals so much. Like, oof, like the way that I just like squeeze onto the cat or the dog at the house sometimes. I think I spent like 3 hours spending time with the cat in my room the other day just to try and get my mind off of things, and we had a good time, me and the cat. But most of my things are or have always been like reading, being taken
Mm.
out of a situation and put into some order, some other story, some other idea. So like listening to music helps a lot. So sometimes like the song that I'm listening to, I can relate to what is causing me stress. Like I can relate those two things together and it helps me get through it. Reading a book that's completely different situation that is got crazy stuff going on. So I don't have to think about my crazy stuff, or watching a TV show or a movie or something like that. I related to a lot of those things. And also, there were some things on there that had to do with like self-care, which I didn't even realize I really did, or I didn't think about it as self-care, but like doing my nails or doing my hair or doing makeup, like doing makeup for these sorts of shows, like I just completely don't think about anything else, and it's all that I'm doing is trying to make up my face, make it look good, make it look nice. And it's artistic and it takes my mind off of things.
Yeah, it's always good to have something to do that's creative. That's why when you want to do this podcast, I was like, yeah, that would be great. Something to
Yeah.
do in the middle of the stress cake.
And one of the things on there that kind of caught my eye and why I wanted to bring it up was one of the things was to listen to a podcast. Hello, you're de-stressing right now, you guys. And also practicing compassion, which I thought was really interesting that that was on there. It said, practice compassion, be kind to yourself when you are struggling, notice and change critical or judgmental thoughts. I thought that that was really good one because that's taking into account like self-care, practicing compassion for yourself. We talk a lot about, being compassionate to other people and looking out for people who might be struggling or who might be going through a hard time. But like sometimes you're going through a hard time. Sometimes you are the one that is having issues or having a difficult time, and you are so hard on yourself that you just have to take a step back and be like, you know what? This is hard. This is difficult what I'm going through. This is like insane, the situation that I'm in. And it's okay to feel like that. It's okay to let myself like take care of myself first, because you can't help anybody if you are not able to help yourself first.
I'm so glad to hear you bring that up because when we were talking about the car accident that you had, for instance, I was so struck by your compassion or your concern for everybody but yourself. And I thought it would be so interesting if you told people the story about maybe being in that accident and kind of, I mean, it's a fascinating story in itself. And then it obviously ties into some of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so our like my story time for today was I decided to talk about this car accident that I was in. That was pretty crazy, pretty wild. But one of the things I've really struggled with basically since that accident, when I realized this about myself, is that I do not care for myself in the same way that I care for other people. This advice that I just gave you is pretty much one that I'm trying to give myself, that I'm trying to learn for myself. And it's a difficult road to navigate, to figure out. But so when I moved here to Utah, I had just gotten out of a really crazy, serious relationship. And so I took a couple of months to figure out who I am myself. And then I decided to put myself into the dating world, which I hadn't done for a really long time. Um, and definitely not in the way that I was trying to do it now. Like before, I had dated in kind of an unhealthy way, and had relationships start from basically nothing And so I was trying to take things slow. I was trying to actually go out on dates and get to know someone first. So I
By the way, I love when you're like that voice that you use. Like, I hadn't done that in a really long time. It's just
a
like
really long time. I also use that voice when like when I see really cute animals, although it's much more aggressive when I see really cute animals. I was talking to Mac, my partner, speaking of dating. I was talking to Mac, my partner, the other day on the phone when I was driving somewhere or whatever, and I took a detour and I saw these deer. And this is the first time like I had really seen like the deer or whatever when I was driving in the middle of the day. And I was just like, oh my gosh, look at those deer. That's so cute. Like, and I used that voice, and Mac was like, you're so ridiculous.
no, it's the best.
um, they also said that it was really adorable, which I appreciate being called adorable. But anyway, uh, so I had put myself back out there into the dating world, and I was going on dates with different people, trying to get to know people, and also it was kind of like to become friends with other people too, like in case it didn't work out like to date, that we could also be friends in some manner. And so like there was this guy who was very kind, very sweet, and we had already been on a date. We were trying to make plans for a second date, but at the time I was working overnight, and so my time during the day was pretty limited to whenever I fell asleep, whenever I woke up, and it changed every single day because I was not consistent, which is not a good idea. Like, do not do that. But it was really hard to find time to be able to make a date, like make plans for a date. And so finally one day, I don't remember exactly what caused it or whatever, but he was basically like, I don't really care what we do, but I would like to spend some time with you. I would like to get to know you. And I said, well, I can't today. Like, I have to go grocery shopping. And he was like, we could go grocery shopping. We could do that together. And I was like, okay. Which is kind of a silly date idea. I still don't know how that exactly would have gone because we did not make it to the grocery store.
Good transition.
Yeah. But I didn't know what to expect or what was going to happen. But anyway, he came to pick me up, and it just happened to be like the first day of the year, or of the season, I guess. I think it was October, maybe the end of September. I really don't remember, and you'll see why. Maybe I don't remember later in this story, but I don't really remember, but I do remember it was the first day that it was raining, and it was raining aggressively. Like, it was a crazy amount of rain. It was like Seattle situation kind of rain. And he like got to the house, I went outside, I got in the car, and he was like, I just want to warn you and make sure like you're okay with taking this car, because it wasn't his normal car, it wasn't his regular car or whatever. And he was like, my tires are kind of bald. I did not hear bald. I heard bold. Like in bold font, bold. And so I was like super, super confused.
Okay, time out. When you pictured bold tires, what were you imagining?
Okay, I don't know anything about cars, all right? I just want to make that clear. I know how to change a tire, and I know the things that were wrong with my cars in the past. And even then, I don't know how to fix those things. I don't know like, I don't know the descriptions of tires. And so I was like, oh, fancy bold tires. Okay. I thought he was bragging because this is a date, of course. So I thought like it was like, just to let you know, I got bold tires. Which is not how he said it. It's not. But in my head, the way I remember it was he was like, yeah, I got bold tires. Like, ooh, I got bold tires, baby. Like, I don't know. I don't know. But I was like, okay, whatever. And I like buckled up and he buckled up and we set off, we go. And we make it, I don't know, maybe like 8 blocks from my house. Not very far at all. And he's driving very safely, very like taking control. Anytime we like slid a little bit, like he was in control of the car. But we got to this intersection. It was a 4-way intersection, and he was trying to slow down for the stop, but we slid a little bit into the intersection, not by much, but a little bit. And he kind of like turned so that way, if like the other car didn't like need to go or something, I think he was trying to do it so that we would turn right or something, even though we weren't supposed to. But so he like turned the wheel, so we turned a little bit like this, like diagonal, and the other car across the way that was stopping at about the same time was going very fast, did not like lost control, like the car just went full force forward and went directly for our car and hit the driver's side of the car and pushed the car so it went over like onto its side, onto the passenger side. So my side of the car is on the ground and his side of the car is up in the air, the driver's side of the car. It all happened very fast, so I don't really remember exactly how it got to that position. I don't remember like any specifics. I hit my head during the accident. The what are they called? Airbags. They went off, and I hit my head against the passenger window pretty hard. But I didn't even like realize how hard. But I hit my head, and then I was just kind of like laying against the door a little bit. Had gotten hit by the airbag, and I look up or look to my side, which is up now, at my date to make sure that he was okay, and he is knocked out completely. So I am like, oh, this is crazy. This is insane. And I couldn't process like I could not process how crazy everything was. So I started laughing to a certain, like a little bit, like this nervous laughter. And the guy in the other car was with, I think, like his wife or girlfriend or somebody. Gets out of his car and comes to make sure we're okay. And he's like yelling through the window at me. And I'm like trying to listen to him, but everything's all crazy and jumbled up, and I'm laughing. And he's like, "Are you okay? Like, I'm going to get you out. I'm going to help you out." And I think he realizes that my date is passed out. And so he's like, "Oh, I don't want to move him," because he would have had to get him out first to get to me. And so, like, he's like trying to figure out what to do, whatever. I'm guessing that his girlfriend or whatever called 911 for the accident. And like maybe some other people, I don't know. But the next thing I knew, that there were paramedics there, and they were getting him out of the car and then reaching down, cutting me out because my seatbelt was like jammed. So I couldn't get out. Otherwise, I probably would have tried to get out myself. But they get me out. I'm basically like, I'm fine. Like, I'm okay. Because I really thought, like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I kind of hit my head, but whatever. This guy is passed out. This guy must be in severe condition. Like, so I'm concerned about my date. And so they kind of take him, they put him into the ambulance, and they're talking to me of like, do you, like, we need to take you, we need to get you in to like see what's going on with you. And I'm like, I'm fine, I'm just gonna go with him to make sure he's okay. So I get into the ambulance too, and a paramedic comes up to me and is like, "Okay, so I'm gonna ask you some questions, just make sure you're okay. You said you hit your head." I was like, "Yes, I hit my head." And he's like, "Okay, so what's your name?" And I go, and that's all I remember. And I passed out. Like, I just completely fainted in the ambulance. And I cannot really remember exactly when I came back to. Like, I don't remember if it was in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, which was only, again, a couple of blocks away. Like, I lived really close to the hospital. So it was a short trip. So I don't know if I woke up in the ambulance, like I'd only been out for like a second, or if I was out the entire ride to the hospital and woke up like as they were pulling me out of the ambulance. But I know that they assisted me in getting out of the ambulance and got me into a room very quickly. And then there was this woman who was asking me questions, who was asking me questions like, oh, what's your name? And I was like, I know I'm Mariah, but I don't remember the rest. Like, I couldn't think of my last name, which, to be fair to myself, my last name is quite long, is quite complicated, is in Italian. But I couldn't, like, remember my last name. I kept thinking about my middle name as my last name or something, but I knew that was wrong. Then she was asking me, okay, like, do you have, like, an emergency contact person? I knew that it was my best friend. Couldn't remember Mallory's name. Couldn't remember her phone number. I couldn't remember anything. And so then finally she was like, okay, well, let me see your ID. My ID was in my purse, which was in the car. And so I was like, oh God, like, I don't know. And so all of this, like, was kind of crazy. And so they're starting to catch on to the fact that, like, I'm not remembering things, not because I'm just an idiot, but because, like, I hit my head that must be some sort of, like, connection to the accident, right? So they stopped kind of asking me, like, these probing questions because they can tell that I'm getting frustrated. Because, like, how frustrating, how crazy, how difficult it is to be a person who suddenly cannot remember your own name. Like,
scary.
So scary. Like, it just takes you so completely out of the moment. And like, thank God I was still in shock, because I think if I hadn't been in shock still, that I would have been straight up a wreck, like a mess. I would have been so panicked. Like, I can't remember my own name, and it might have made things worse. But I was sitting there for a while. They kind of, like, tried to figure out some stuff. I gave them my phone so they could look through to call emergency contact. I don't remember if they called Mallory or tried to or whatever, but Mallory is my emergency contact. Oh, you know what? They had me call my mom. They told me to call my mom. And so after a little bit of them asking me questions, making sure I was, like, generally okay, they were going to have me go for a scan or whatever. And so I called my mom real quick to let her know what was going on. Oh, I think I was Snapchatting Patrick, actually, too. Like, he had asked me to play video games with him after I got back from the grocery store. And so he Snapchatted me a little bit later and was like, oh, like, are you ready to play video games? I was like, no, buddy, I'm at the hospital, actually. Don't tell Mom. And Mom calls me. But I was talking to my mom about it, freaked out, whatever. And then I was still so concerned about him. Like, I didn't care so much about me, what was going on with me, because it felt like, even though I wasn't remembering things, again, I was still in shock. Even though I wasn't remembering things, I was like, I'll get through that. I'll figure that out. It'll be fine. What about the man that was literally passed out in the car, though? Like, what happened to him? And so I was worried, I was concerned, I was freaking out. And finally, I asked a nurse. I was like, hey, like, what is going on with him? And she was like, don't worry, we'll talk about that later. And I immediately jumped to worst case scenario, which is that he's dead.
Well, it's not exactly like she set you up to not jump to worst case scenario. That wasn't a very helpful thing for her to say.
No, but like, rationally, I can kind of understand why she would say it in that way, because I'm having memory issues. Like, they have no idea what I'm going to hold in my head or whatever, or what's going to be too much information or whatever. And so, like, even telling me that he had broken his arm and had yet to wake up, which is what the situation was at the time that she told me that, like, might have been too much or whatever, and I might have started freaking out. So I can kind of understand why she said it the way that she said it, but like, it also was very worrisome, and I'm a very much worst case scenario person. So I was like, he's dead, and I start kind of freaking out internally, but I don't want to worry other people around me about me. So I internally freak out. I don't even let them know that I'm freaking out about it. And I am on the phone with my mom, talking to my mom and telling her and crying to her, because she finally, like, she's the one who made me realize that, like, this was super serious, because she was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, are you gonna be all right? Like, have they taken a scan? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Like, freaking out. And that's when I realized, like, wow, this was actually a really serious accident. I should be a little bit less, like, calm right now, maybe. And so I started to freak out a little bit. And then finally, I got the okay to kind of to be able to leave. They wanted to do more tests, but I was like, nuh-uh, I got to get out of here. I got to go check on my date. And so they basically told me that I had a grade 3 concussion and was having some memory issues, memory loss, that was most likely temporary. And so I left with that and with some pain meds and some instructions of like how to take care of it or whatever, and to come back in for additional scans and stuff. So then I left. I went to go see about him, because finally got them to tell me what room he was in. And I get there, and he is like sobbing, crying as soon as he sees me, because he also was told in a similar fashion, don't worry about that, when he asked about me. So he also thought I was dead or severely injured. And he didn't remember. He was passed out. Like, he got knocked out as soon as the accident happened. He basically, like, the airbags went off and hit his face really hard. And he hit his head on the back. Like, his head, like, kind of bounced off the back of his chair or seat or whatever. And so then he got knocked out. He also broke his arm. And so they were like dealing with that situation or whatever. So I go over to him, I give him a hug, and I'm like, I'm okay, like, I'm alive. Thank God you're alive. And we both kind of like laugh about the situation because it was just so crazy. And yet we had such, in a way, minor injuries. So like, it was just kind of this relief or whatever, and I was just waiting with him until his parents came, because he didn't have a car to go anywhere. I also didn't have a car to go anywhere, but I wasn't worried about me. Anyway, so I was waiting with him until his parents got there. His mom shows up, and he goes, oh, Mom, this is my girlfriend, Mariah. It was our second date that we didn't even go on.
This just keeps growing. The story just keeps growing. Now you've got a mom meeting all in one setting with a huge bump on your head.
Oh my gosh. To the mortification in that moment of like, I don't even know my last name right now. And I'm meeting this man's mother and being introduced as a girlfriend, which I'm pretty sure we're not boyfriend and girlfriend, but who knows? Maybe I forgot that little detail. And then also like, oh, I don't know what I look like I've been crying, whatever. And so then I leave at that point so that, he could get all fixed up or whatever and be on his way. I leave. I should have waited and gotten a ride from, I guess, his mom or something. Or, I don't know, called my best friend who I lived with to come and get me. But in my head, I was like, "Ah, she's sleeping," because we had the same work schedule of working overnight. And so I was like, oh, she's sleeping. I don't want to wake her up. I don't want to worry her. I'm only a couple of blocks away from my house. I'll just walk.
What are you doing walking? After bumping your head, don't know things, what you don't want to bother people.
And let me tell you, it's not a
Pouring.
far walk. It's not a far walk from that hospital to where I was living at the time. Not a far walk. However, I want to make very clear, it was still raining, and I had been in a pretty serious car accident and had a concussion, which, are you supposed to walk for that far when you have a concussion? No. The answer is no. So I went home. I got home. I was freezing cold. I had walked when I was walking. At one point I think I stepped off the sidewalk because somebody else was walking on the sidewalk and I was trying to get out of the way or whatever. And I stepped into a puddle that was, I thought, this big of a puddle. Turned out to be to my knee. So I was soaked, completely soaked. Got home, freezing cold, got into the bathtub and just sat in the hot water and kept putting hot water into it every time it got cold for like an hour. And then got out and was hungry. But guess who still hadn't gotten groceries and so didn't have any food? Me. Me. That's who. Um, and then, after all that, I got ready so that I could go to work. And I went to work that night. And when I got to work, I was telling my coworker about what had happened. And he was shocked. He couldn't believe that I was at work or that all of that stuff had happened to me. And I had a huge bruise on my forehead. I still have a picture of it. It was crazy, crazy bruise on my face. And I hadn't even looked in the mirror. And he told me, and I went into the mirror in the bathroom and I was like, oh my gosh, I hope that this showed up after I met his mom, which is a crazy thing to think when we didn't get together. We're not together. Like we went on a couple dates after that, but that was it. It was just wild. But I realized too when I was talking to Mallory afterwards, because she was very upset with me that I hadn't called her to tell her that I was in a car accident, especially one so serious, and B, that I hadn't called her to come and pick me up afterwards. It made me realize that like I really do not care about myself as much as I care about literally anyone else. I was like sobbing, crying a couple of weeks ago because I saw somebody get into a serious car accident. It was this person that kind of flew out of their car, and they died pretty suddenly. But I saw it happen, and I'm sobbing, crying about this person that got into this accident that I didn't even know. I didn't even know that person. Had no relation to him whatsoever. But it was just like I mourned the loss of this person. So I care literally about strangers more than I care about myself. And that is so messed up. That's so twisted. And when I started going to therapy, I realized that like so much of my problems, of the things that I need to work on, are literally just caring about myself, even just a little bit more.
Yeah, a lot more, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a lot more for me, but just in general, being able to care about myself, being able to be more compassionate about the things that I can't do or the things that I am still working on and stuff like that. So I just like, I can't even believe that that entire thing happened to me. And looking back on it, and it caused a lot of memory issues. Like it was about I want to say like 3 months or so after that before I could like consistently remember my birthday.
Wow. Well, and then it seems like all of what's been going on this last week might be related, huh?
Yeah, so the whole reason I thought about this at all was because I was talking to my doctor about I don't even remember. I think we were just talking about treatment and stuff like that. And then he asked me, hey, so have you ever had any concussions? Now, I am a very, very clumsy girl. Very clumsy. I've had a lot of times where I've fallen and I've hit my head. And I start talking about some of the times. Like, there's one time when I was in the mountains and I slipped, and it was on a school trip, and I slipped and I hit my head on a rock and went to the hospital for that and had a concussion on that trip. I've had several concussions. This was the most severe, the one from the story that I was talking about, but I've had a lot of them. So I'm telling him all these incidences, and I tell him about the one from this car accident, and he goes, that is a really serious concussion, Mariah. I feel like we should have had a conversation about this before. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, I didn't really think about it. Like, it didn't seem relevant to anything that's been going on with leukemia. You know what I mean? And so we're talking about it, and then we were talking about it again a couple days ago, and he said, that this seizure could be related to my lupus, but it could also be related to this situation that happened, the accident. It could be that I'm having like I had a seizure, or I've had multiple seizures over the last couple of months and just didn't realize, because of like just the nature of seizures can be so different that sometimes it could just be staring off into space, not really recognizing that you're not paying attention to things that are going around you. And I zone out all the time, so I have no idea. I have to do more scans and more tests and stuff to see like if that is possible. I don't even know how much they can tell from those sorts of things about the past, especially over the last couple of months or whatever, but I still have a lot of testing and stuff to do to figure that out. But it is wild to think that this accident, I could have been having seizures this entire time and not even realizing it.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. You know, I was thinking about the phrase that you said. What did we say? What kind of cake did we say?
Um, I don't think I named it. What did I don't remember.
Who was? I can't remember either. But unpleasant cake, whatever it was. And so I was thinking about like all this journey that you're on. And have you ever read Man's Search for Meaning? Since you're a reader.
No.
Okay.
Is it like a self-help book sort of
It
situation? Is
was
it
it was
fiction?
written it was written by a psychologist who survived the Holocaust.
So it's a
And he,
nonfiction book?
yeah, yeah,
I don't read a lot of nonfiction books, but I do when it's related to something important.
yeah. He talked a little bit about suffering, or a lot of it about suffering and meaning, and how it helps us grow. Suffering helps us grow. I've noticed you grow a lot in this process, but I was curious, like how you're seeing yourself grow.
I think that this journey, especially going to therapy right now, this journey that I'm on is teaching me a lot about not only how much other people care about me, that I didn't even realize how much they care about me. Like, even just as simple as like people in our family who I talk to, or I like their posts on Facebook or whatever. Just people in general who have reached out and who have just told me, you know, little things that they remember about me, or things that make them smile when they think about me. just realizing how many people in my life do care a lot about me, but also how much I need to care and love myself in a similar manner. One of the things that we talked about as a family a couple of weeks ago was some of my weaknesses, and every single one of my weaknesses were something that is actually a strength that I have, but I just take it too far. So, like, I'm really, really, really kind. I'm a really kind person, but it gets to the point where people take advantage of me, which we talked a little bit about a couple weeks ago with Fruits Basket. But I'm really, really kind. I'm really considerate. I'm really, really empathetic. I care a lot about other people. I care about things that they're going through. I care a lot about things that are happening in the world right now, to the point where I can't watch the news without preparing myself mentally for the fact that it's going to be a lot of bad stuff. So there's just a lot of things that are really good strengths, but I have so much of it that it turns it into a weakness for me. And so being compassionate for others, it's really, really great, but I need to reflect that inwards a little bit more, a lot more, because it is destroying a lot of things in my life. And it is really hard to get through something like this when you don't really care what happens to you. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm learning on this journey, is not only that I need to do it, but how important it is for my survival for me to care about myself a little bit more every day, in just like the little things, letting people help me, letting people take care of me, letting people be there for me, even though I don't want to inconvenience other people. Like, I need to let them help me. I need to ask for help. I need to not care so much about them that I'm not caring about myself.
I'm glad you're learning that. You're such a giver.
Mm.
Um, well, I think it's been a big week for you to bring back that story, to go through seizures, to kind of like recalibrate to the new normal.
Yeah.
People want to interact with you after listening to this or support you. How do they do that?
That is really easy to do, Jason. Thank you so much. I have put together a website, which I mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast, the-mariah-effect.com. And on there, it has all sorts of great links to our different social media pages where you can follow along. We post things on TikTok, on Instagram, on our Facebook page, things like that, on Twitter sometimes. And we also have the link to our Patreon, which is just super easy to sign up for. You just go click on the link, go to the Patreon page, and there should be our different tiers, which shows all the different exclusives that we offer at the different tiers. It's $3.99, $5.99, and $7.99 are the different tiers that you can pick. It's just one time per month, and you get all those exclusive for the entire month. We have one Patreon member, Darsana, who is at the elephant tier, which is the $7.99 a month. And we post new things on there every single week. So you can go on there and see the episode a day early. You can see a preview of the episode. It just really depends on what tier you pick. But anyway, we have that on the website. And then we also have my blog, where I post talking about more medical information or just thoughts and feelings that I have throughout the week. And then also on the website, you can post any of your stories that you might want to share and have me share here on the podcast, and we can talk about it, or just share with me and I'll message you privately. But I really enjoy listening to stories. It's one of my favorite things, or reading about stories. And so being able to have people who can relate to me because maybe you were in a crazy accident you don't really remember that well, or maybe you've been on a really, really bad first date, or I guess second date. But anyway, I want to hear your stories and I want to be able to relate with you guys just like how you relate to me.
Love that. Yeah, I'd love to hear people's stories too, and I'm so excited that you created the space for people to identify parts of their story with yours and share them. So we'll see what emerges.
Yeah, I would love to get to a point where it's just so many stories that I can not even read them fast enough. Which I'm a fast reader, so it's going to have to get a lot more people following along and sharing their stories. So hop to it, people.
It's awesome. Well, do you want to take us home?
Yeah. I just want to say, like, for this week, the thing I want everybody to focus on is to just be able to think about yourself a little bit more. Be selfish. If it feels like it's something that's super selfish and, you're not thinking about other people, but you always think about other people, be selfish for a minute. Have some compassion for yourself for the time that you want to commit to that. Like for the day, for the week, whatever it is. I'm going to try this week to be way more compassionate to myself and try out a lot of the stress coping techniques and anxiety things that I found online, and that's going to be linked on the website too for you to check out if you want to check that out. But yeah, that's what I'm going to really try for this week, and that's what I want for you too. So we will see you for the next episode.
See y'all. Bye. I love you.
I love you too.
Mwah. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
See ya. Bye.